Hello, and thanks for joining us today. Our previous broadcast outlined our design for returning to school, and I'm glad that so many of you were able to view that presentation. Today I have a few updates, and then I'll be having a conversation with our high school principals and a few other staff members about the learning options for students in grades 7 to 12. Let me start by sharing that we've revised our 2021 calendar to reflect the designs that we described on our previous broadcast. You can view this revised calendar on our BCPS website. Please remember that students attending elementary schools and Bedford Primary School will start school on August 12th. Those attending middle school will start on August 13th, while those attending high schools will start on August 17th. Next, I need to let you know that we've established start and end times for in-person learning on each campus. We may need to stagger these times slightly to allow for social distancing. But generally, our plan is to have learners attending elementary schools and Bedford Primary School to start at 8 a.m. and finish at 1:30 p.m. Those attending middle schools will start at 9 a.m. and finish at 2:30 p.m., while those attending high schools will start at 10 a.m. and end at 3:30 p.m. Next, I need to remind everyone that returning to school during a pandemic or otherwise requires parents and guardians to update your information using PowerSchool registration. This includes all new and returning students, as well as those who are opting for in-person, blended, or 100% remote learning in 2021. As a reminder, you can access PowerSchool registration on our BCPS website. You can also contact your child's school if you have any questions or need any assistance completing the PowerSchool registration process. Next, I want to let you know about a very important form that we need all parents and guardians to complete by July 21st, 2020. This form was emailed on July 14th, and it's also available on our BCPS website. In our previous outreach efforts, we asked parents and guardians if they're able and willing to drive their children to and from school. We also asked about your interest in a 100% remote learning option. This information was very important to our initial design efforts, but now we've reached the point where we need you to let us know what you've decided about both topics, transportation and remote learning options for each child in your household. In the past few days, we've received many questions from parents about the blended and 100% remote learning options, questions that need to be answered before they can decide which option to select on the form. Given that the forms are due on July 21st, we thought it would be helpful to address the most frequently asked questions about the options for grades 7 to 12 with our 3 high school principals and other staff. So at this point, I'd like to welcome our principals and a few other staff members. And the first question I'd like to throw out, I'll just throw it out to our principals, and any one of you can jump in, or several of you can as well. And probably the question we are hearing the most is, what's the difference between the blended learning that's going to occur on our high school campuses and the 100% remote learning option, especially since both of them include remote learning or online learning in them? Can any of you speak to that?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit about it. I think the biggest thing about the blended learning on the high school campus is the students will actually be on campus. They'll attend 2 to 3 days a week, and they'll be with a learning coach. Where the 100% remote learning, they would be doing all their learning at home, online, remotely. The instruction will still be primarily given remotely, even when you're on campus in a blended format, but students will be working with the learning coach to determine what extra help they need as they work through the courses, and how to, the learning coaches will help them schedule office hours with their teachers of the content, as well as schedule some seminars for needed instruction in a virtual format. They would also be able to, for select classes that need labs, such as CTE classes, science classes, band, art, some fine arts classes, they would be able to actually go to those teachers' rooms and get instruction in that lab.
And Dr. Shook, if I could add to that, we spent a lot of time when we worked on this schedule trying to figure out a way that we could safely provide face-to-face time with teachers as needed. And so what we said is teachers have to have a virtual presence, because we know that should we have to adapt to a potential closing, we need to be ready to do that and do it well quickly. But our approach is blended learning. And so the virtual presence will be there, but we want teachers, just like Dr. Cornett said, to have access face-to-face should they need it. And that might be a shop class, that might be a lab through science, or might be a guided assistance in one of their core classes. So it might look different, but that is very important that they will be connected to their teacher of record should that need arise. And even more so, we wanted to have that flexibility should students require help or they need to be on campus every day. We want to have a forum where we can talk about that and we can work with their learning coach and possibly even provide that should we find there's even greater need. But again, we're not depending on the Chromebook to deliver instruction. Our teachers will through a blended format.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, to pile where Dr. Trosper and Dr. Cornett have already said, we have those face-to-face times. The kids will be able to receive direct instruction from their teachers in those settings. Small group and in a little more intimate setting where it's like a 1-to-4, 1-to-5 when they're getting some of that instruction, those Q&A sessions versus some larger groups. But the other component that was kind of spoken about was that learning coach. And we were very intentional about how we tried to match kids up with those learning coaches and looking at the possibility of some common interest and trying to get in a position where those kids not only have direct contact with their teachers of record on a daily basis, but also those learning coaches who are certified teachers who can work with them through their academics and support them as they keep pace and contact parents and maintain that communication stream so people are all on the same page and we're all working as a team to make sure kids are successful here at school and in the virtual environment.
Okay, well, I think that's very helpful because, again, I think because the remote part of the blended is similar to remote learning, many parents are just trying to figure out what's the best fit, what's the best option, especially since they have to make a selection by the 21st. So I think we've all put out in our communication that initially we're going to be bringing the young people in 2 days a week. And a couple of questions related to that we're receiving, and I'm sure you all are too. One of them is, are we going to make any effort in that 2-day-a-week format to physically separate learners of different grade levels, especially concerns from parents of 7th and 8th graders who traditionally would be in our middle schools? And a related question to the 2 days a week, is it going to be a hard and fast 2 days a week for the entire time we're in this format, or is there any possibility that might change for individual children?
As far as separating the grade levels, we are looking at that very closely, and that has been a priority of ours from day one in planning of this. And the way our campus at Sand River is spread out by building, we're really looking at separating and dividing the grade levels and learning coaches in each building by grade level. So it does separate the younger students from our more mature high schoolers, older high schoolers. Now, as far as electives go, there may be some electives where students do have to go for office hours or labs at different points of the campus because of the facilities, where there may be some very small situations there where there could be a mix, but those will be very supervised and very small in number.
And I would say the same for my school, Dr. Shook. It's important to us that we consider the ages of these students. And so we're going to provide a separate environment for our middle school. And keeping in mind that under the traditional model of the last few years, 8th grade did come on up to the high school and take certain classes. So there was some mixing of grade levels, but it was structured and it was supervised. What we're really concerned with is the unsupervised, unstructured, interactions where there's not an adult present. And that's where we're going to really work hard to keep the grade levels separate as we can for the safety of all students, especially the middle school that are coming up.
Right, and then similar to Liberty High School and Stanton River, while they're open campuses and we're closed, we're one building, we have isolated separate wings of the school for different grade levels. There'll be a 7th grade hall and an 8th grade hall that are separate from our juniors and seniors that are on the other side of the building, and a 9th grade level, a whole level of the school dedicated to 9th grade. So even within a closed building, we've been able to kind of isolate different grade levels and limit some of their movements within their colleagues and their like peers.
I think the other part of your question was about are the 2 days a week a hard and fast rule. So right now, to begin with, and getting school going, the blended portion going, we're planning on our A group. We'll have 2 groups, A group and B group, and our A group students will come Monday, Thursdays, and our B group students will come Tuesday, Fridays. Wednesdays will eventually turn into a flex day, and we're still working through that flex day to see how we can best serve our students for that. As far as a hard and fast rule, a lot of parents have reached out to me about if I'm assigned to Monday, Thursday, do I have to come every Monday and every Thursday? And what I've been saying to begin with, if you choose the blended learning model, we're going to start out with that as a rule right now until our learning coaches can really get to know our students and our teachers get to know our students. And then once we get in a good routine and our learning coaches have a good feel of where our students are with achievement, then they can work with the families, the parents, the students, and the teachers to determine if that student needs to come every day. Now it also depends on courses. There's some courses where labs are required, dual enrollment courses where things are going to be required. So some of that really depends on courses that the student is enrolled in, but it also depends on the achievement level, the success level at that point with the student, and how the learning coach feels with the teachers about that child coming.
And I think along that same line is, while we're saying 2 days a week, I think the reality is 5 days a week are learning days. Just whether we're on campus or not, there will be expectations that students are continuing to learn even those days where they're at home, whether that is tapping into a virtual classroom or looking at a flipped classroom model, or just pursuing some assignments that have been given or directed by the teacher for application of the knowledge they got that day, or kind of researching for the next day. So I think, while physically we may only be on campus 2 days a week, we are learning all 5 days of the week, and there'll be structures in place for that through that virtual format.
And just one more part of that, Dr. Shook, is if the IEP team were to determine that the students should be there every day, we're certainly going to keep those students with disabilities in mind. There's just going to be times when they might need some more support. And so we're going to make sure we're working with our case managers, IEP teams. And then I did want to mention also, I've gotten some questions about siblings too. Can they come on the same days? And we want to work to make sure that siblings can come on those days. So while there is certain groups where they're going to be assigned to, we want to help families to work through the logistics and some of the challenges that might have arisen with our plan.
I really think that's a good answer, and it's going to help a lot of parents out there, because I think what we're saying in essence is that there is a pretty hard and fast expectation to start the school year, but because so much of this is unknown, we really need to set that expectation. And I like, Brian, what you said about it's a 5 day a week expectation. We speak about the times you come into school, you're expected to do that, but I think it also shows how important it is for our students to take their learning seriously, something that we heard may not have happened so much when we ended school abruptly in the spring, and also to work with their parents, their teachers, and that learning coach if they feel like there are some better learning options for them, and that those may come a little bit down the line. And I'm glad to hear that we're going to be flexible and kind of look at one student at a time, exactly what they need in this kind of unknown environment we're going into. And so a related question, and really anyone can answer this, we're asking families to make this decision by the 21st about choosing blended or 100% remote learning if they have someone in grades 7 through 12. And a question we're asking is there going to be freedom of movement to switch between those options throughout the early part of the year, the semester, the school year? And I think we need to answer that question, since this is a decision they have to make here shortly. Is anyone out there that can give them that answer?
Currently, right now, what we're asking families to do is to sign up for at least first semester, if not the entire year. And certainly we'll work with any family that does have a need with regards to homebound, but we are asking right up front that you commit to a semester.
Okay, so, and I know that may be hard for some parents to think about with a decision of this magnitude, but I guess I would just say to our audience, there is so much logistics and planning that's involved with the 100% remote option in terms of staffing that appropriately and making sure we can support, and also supporting the blended model. And so these principals and the other staff really need to know what's going to happen. The other thing is both of these options are so different. It may take a while for your child to get used to either option. And we want to send the message to them and to you that we want you to stick with whatever you decide. Know that it's going to be different. But I am glad to hear that at least at the end of the first semester, we will offer the option for folks to switch if the option that they've chosen isn't working. But our ask is to try to stick with it for the whole year and make it work as best you can. So here's another question specifically to the 100% remote option. And it really surrounds the idea of after-school activities and extracurriculars that would take place outside of the normal school day, knowing up front some of those may be significantly limited during phase 3 for sure, and possibly other phases. So does anyone know that answer? Do their 100% remote option students have the opportunity to participate in any or all of those activities?
Really, the answer is two-pronged, activities and then VHSL sports and VHSL activities. So if it's a school after school activity, some of our school activities are required with a course. So like our CTSOs and our CTE programs, to be included and to be able to be eligible for those programs or activities, you have to be enrolled in the CTE course associated with that CTSO. So that would be a blended only option. As far as the VHSL, VHSL guidelines have eligibility guidelines that all schools have to abide by. And in this format, it's a little bit different this year for us because we usually offer 7 classes throughout the whole school year. So now we're offering 3 to 4 first semester and 3 to 4 second semester. So to be eligible for any sport, the student has to be enrolled in three classes currently and pass 3 classes the previous semester. So enroll in 3 and pass 3.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize, if you're 100% remote, you do have access to anything that would happen after school, unless that activity has some type of limitation because of a course that you have to be enrolled in that you can't access remotely, or if it's a VHSL activity, and most of those are sports, but we have some non-sports in that group as well, and you have to meet the same eligibility requirements, but assuming that you have, there's no reason that if, say, we have basketball offered at some point this year, that you could still play basketball for your high school team, even if you'd chosen the 100% remote learning option. Is that correct, Dr. Cornett?
That is correct, as long as you passed enroll in 3 and pass 3 the previous semester.
Okay, so maybe a related question that we kind of got at there but didn't totally get to. We are hearing questions about, I really like the idea of 100% remote generally, but there might be one class or elective, maybe it's band, maybe it's a career and tech course, that the only way my child could really take it would be to come into school. If someone is electing 100% remote, are we then going to let them come into school for that one class, or are we kind of viewing that differently because 100% remote is 100% remote? Who can answer that question?
I'm happy to take that one, Dr. Shook. So 100% remote is 100% remote. So if a student wants to take a CTE course or a specialty course that's only offered on campus, then that would be a blended learning opportunity. And so we would have those students in our blended learning side.
Okay, so that I think may help the decision for some families and some children. I guess the way I'm hearing that, Karen, is that if it's really, really important for me to be in one of those courses, then blended is the option that I should select. And back to a previous response that I think Dr. Cornett made is, and Josh, correct me if I'm wrong, you know, we're starting with 2 days a week. And so you would do your 2 days a week, and that would also include that elective if that's what you really want. But for the responsible student whose parent and teachers and learning coaches agree, the actual in-person instruction for the non-elective course, a lot of that could probably be completed at home. Is that fair to say that?
I think so. I think that that's what we're hearing a lot from parents. And I think Dr. Cornett answered it beautifully, that as we get to know students and our learning coaches get to know students, there may be less of a requirement for students to be with their learning coaches for some of their core classes and just be on campus for certain face-to-face electives or hands-on things. And I also want to kind of say on the same vein, when I've talked to parents, a lot of questions are about that social interaction their students really want and crave. And so I think some of the questions parents are asking, will students be able to see one another in the hallways and see one another in the cafeteria? And so I just want to say that while we are trying to really mitigate the spread of COVID-19, those activities, those large group activities won't be occurring. So I think that's something that students are worried about. They're going to be missing some social time on campus. And so there may be some social time in with the learning coach and that cohort of students, or when they go to electives. But that general movement around the school will be very limited until we get through this COVID-19 crisis.
Thank you, Dr. Woodford. I think that's really important for folks to hear, because we don't want to give the impression that, you know, that you're going to get to necessarily see your best friend every day the way you used to, because those gathering places and those events, they're simply not going to occur while we're under these restrictions. But, you know, there still will be some in-person interaction. It just won't look like it's always looked like. Okay, so another question we're being asked is, you know, we're looking at August 17th for the blended model to start. And I know we're still kind of spinning up this remote learning option as quickly as we can. Do we anticipate that starting before or after August 17th, just so families can have a rough idea of when that might be starting as they're making this decision?
It certainly is our goal to start August 17th. However, as you were stating, we do have a lot of things that need to come together between now and the 17th of August. So we are looking at that date as a flexible date, but right now we are shooting as the 17th of August as our goal for opening the virtual remote option.
Okay, and Ed, this may be a good question for you as well, but others can certainly chime in. A lot of questions from both those that are thinking about remote or blended about will Bedford County Public Schools be providing home internet access, since both of those require a lot of home internet access ideally, and I know there's other ways we can work with that. Can you talk about a little bit about what we're doing to try to do that, but also kind of what we may be able to promise or guarantee in that space?
Right. We are getting a lot of questions with regards to internet access at home. And we do know that there are families that do not have internet access. We cannot provide internet access to families at this time. However, there are community groups that are working hard to try to look at needs and make sure that those families that are in need do get some access to internet somehow. We also know that the county is in the midst of a very large broadband project that is slated to be complete by the 14th of August. We're still looking at those towers to be complete. We're looking at the equipment to be hung on those towers, and then it will be a matter of looking at how far out does the internet go from these towers, getting services to homes, and then looking at dead spots and trying to address those areas also. So there's a lot going into trying to provide internet to those in need.
So kind of a related question that we're getting, and again, I know every situation is not the same, but if you have a family or a household that knows they currently do not have reliable home internet, and hearing that we can't promise that it will be ready or delivered, is there any reason that they should definitely select the blended? I mean, how could they even do the 100% remote if they didn't have that reliable internet?
So Dr. Hoisington and I are looking at each other because we've talked about this today. So it is certainly very, very important that if you choose the 100% remote option, that you have reliable internet or a way to get to reliable internet. Canvas, which is the platform we're using, does have the ability to download information to flash drives and things like that, but that would be very cumbersome for families to have to do every week. So I think families would need to have access to good internet throughout the week to download assignments and upload work and communicate with teachers. It's not impossible, but it will be very, very challenging and probably would be very frustrating to families.
Okay, and I think that's a good message to put out there to those that are making these considerations here over the next several days. Another question we're getting has to do with the remote learning teachers, and the question is a pretty simple one. Are those teachers going to be from some outside group, or are we looking at Bedford County Public Schools teachers actually being the teachers in that setting?
We've actually taken applications from our own teachers that are already under contract with us, and they will be going through a pretty challenging vetting process to see their skills technology-wise and in the blended learning environment. But they are certified teachers in the content they'll be selected for, and they are Bedford County teachers.
Okay, I think that's important because some of the feedback we received from the spring was that, you know, some of our teachers were pretty skilled in doing that remote learning, and others, you know, had some learning to do of their own to support because it came on us so suddenly. And I guess I would say to our audience, we're spending significant time this summer training all of our teachers to support in this way. But to Dr. Woodford's point, for those that we're going to select for the 100% remote learning, those are going to be those that have proven that they are very strong in that skill set. And so I want to assure parents that are considering that option that we are going to be selective in who we choose for those that we feel like can immediately support well in that setting. Now, we also have questions for both the blended and also the 100% remote about technology support, especially if parents or students don't feel so confident in that when they're not on our campuses or doing the 100% remote. So how, if at all, are we going to be able to support the kind of questions that parents or students may have as they do this remote learning, either in the blended or in the 100% remote setting?
I'll take a part of that question. With regards to technology in the 100% remote, we will support the technology that we are providing to families, and that will be Chromebooks. We have had a one-to-one initiative, grades 6 through 12 this past year, We were slated to try to expand that project down to 3rd grade. We're still hoping that we'll be able to do that. So if a student is assigned a Chromebook from Bedford County Public Schools, we'll support that. We'll have to work with individuals, the families, as to how we get those Chromebooks repaired, how we meet with families and get the equipment back, and then make sure that it's fixed in a timely manner, and then get it back to the student. If it's personal devices, we will not be supporting personal devices, nor will we be supporting internet issues in the home. So as far as the remote option goes, that is our plan at the moment. I'm not sure if the principals can address what's going to happen in the blended. I would certainly say that what you've done in the past with supporting technology will probably be what we will do moving forward.
And I think to add to Dr. Hoisington's response there, there's the technical side of the hardware, the devices, but there's also the education side of teaching young people and parents how to access virtual resources in an effective way. And I think we have a plan to do some significant training up front in the blended model with our learning coaches and showing students how to access those and how to use their devices in a productive educational way, even more so than we have in the past, knowing that a lot of the curriculum and access to the curriculum will be through a virtual kind of module. And I know that our officers and school board officials have been training all of our teachers in that virtual kind of a platform, so we can develop some modules that are effective so we can train students and parents how to access as well. So I think that support through education is as important as the device itself.
Okay, thank you for that. And we'll wrap up here shortly. I know our time is limited. We are getting a question that I think we just need to answer. Do we have any costs that we anticipate with either the blended or the 100% remote learning options that we would be passing along to families that might also impact their decision? I'm not aware of any, but is anyone aware of any that we would want to communicate at this time?
There's no cost for the 100% remote. It wouldn't be any different than normal cost for perhaps a dual enrollment or some type of credentialing certification. So if it was something we would normally charge for at the high school level, there might be a cost to that, but it would be no different than in the years past. So there's no cost to being in either program or being online at all.
Okay, so that exhausts my list of questions that many of you have submitted to us, parents and families that we've received. But before we end, I want to ask, all of our panelists, are there any major questions or issues that you have been receiving over the last several days since we put this form out for parents to select that you feel like we need to put out to families before we kind of end this broadcast?
Dr. Shook, I think that one of the questions that I'm getting a lot is really what are the credentials of the learning coach? Are they teachers? Are they counselors? Are they mental health professionals? And really, what is their role in facilitating learning? And so I think that might be helpful for students and parents if they understood that role a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. Mrs. Robertson, do you want to chime in and kind of share your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I'm happy to speak to that. So the learning coach, and we have been actively involved with training the initial groups of our adolescent instructors, many of whom will be serving as these learning coaches. And as you've heard our three principals describe, the learning coach will be actively involved in working with students to plan for their academic instruction. These will also be teachers of content who are familiar with the requirements of virtual platform performance for learners, but also helping them assist not only in peer consultations, teacher guided assistance, scheduling office hours. So they will be familiar with how to have students access the needed academic supports. But beyond those academic supports, those learning coaches will also be providing embedded social emotional learning competency-driven activities that will be part of their daily routine as they are presenting information to students. I know Dr. Woodford spoke to a concern about parents being concerned about time with friends. So I want to clarify that being a part of that blended model will always provide a student time with peers. It may not be their friends, But part of what we know living in a diverse world is that to be successful in life, we want to make sure that we've got those social emotional competencies really enhanced as part of that learning process to make a student most apt to be ready to move through college and career readiness in a way that they can interact with a wide variety of people. So peer access is a part of this model, and it's going to be an important part of those social emotional learning activities that are presented through the learning coach.
I really appreciate all of our panelists and the information that you've shared. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more insight into making your decision between the remote learning option 100% and the blended learning model that we're offering for students in grades 7 through 12. As a reminder, if you already completed your form and saw something on this broadcast that made you change your mind, you can resubmit that form. Simply take the form, resubmit it. You don't need to call us or email us. We will honor the most recent submission that you give us, and we'll understand that maybe you changed your mind. But we do need those forms turned in by the 21st. I also want to let you know that we spoke very broadly to a number of issues. It may be that your student is in an individual circumstance that doesn't fit nicely or neatly, rather, into one of the categories that we described. And so if that's you, please contact your school and have that conversation with them, and they'll help guide you through which option may be the most appropriate for your child. Thank you again for tuning in, and please stay safe.